So asking for a pay rise in this environment could be especially difficult. It's coming up to traditional bonus time for a lot of corporates, but with pay cuts in industries from hospitality to accounting, what can employees expect? Well, let's bring in Joydeep Hor from People and Culture Strategies. He joins us now. Joydeep, pleasure to have you on the program. I guess as we've talked about, we've heard from pay cuts happening across the board, from everything, as we said, from restaurants, but also into accounting firms, which we've heard a lot about of late. What's your take at the moment? And if you're an employee, are you just expected to sit, I guess, on the same pay, no bonus for potentially months to come?
Well, I think it's a reflection of the uncertain times and some of the additional challenges that employers are probably going to have to start turning their mind to. And for a lot of them, that turning of the mind to is happening right now as we come to 30 June. Because I think for a lot of employers, what I'm seeing is that they are making a number of assumptions as to what their employees are thinking and feeling. And I think a lot of employers would say, well, look, everyone knows that we're in a recession, we're doing it tough, we've got JobKeeper coming in, so therefore for anyone to expect any kind of bonus or pay increase would be ludicrous. But when you put yourself in the position of the employee, as you asked that question, a lot of employees will be saying, well, look, prior to March 2020, I was going gangbusters. I was doing very well. I had a very good appraisal. I've been giving all of this positive feedback, and nothing has changed in terms of my performance or my commitment or my output while I've been working from home for the last few months. And I think what employers are going to have to grapple with, how do they keep those employees engaged? And that's going to be an additional challenge. And for a lot of employers, it's not something that I think they're ready for because of the assumptions that they're making about what employees might be thinking.
But the only difference with that conundrum is that those employees probably don't have as many choices for alternatives at this point in time in the market. In a normal market, they might throw their hands up in the air, walk out the door, start looking at their options, but that just simply isn't the job market that we can see at the moment.
Yeah, I think it is. It's very easy to form that view, and I think on balance that's probably a good summary of the overall market. But we can't lose sight of the fact that quality employees and quality talent are always going to be in demand. And this is, again, I think the real watch out for employers, that if you're not going to be communicating regularly with your employees and keeping them warm and keeping them engaged, and even if it is the case that you're not in a position to be giving them increases now, don't assume that no one is hiring. Certainly doing a lot of work with recruitment companies as clients, it's not as though that there's no activity going on in the recruitment space, and there will always be a place for high talent and high caliber employees, and they're precisely the ones who you would ordinarily be looking after in terms of pay increases and bonuses around this time of year, if that's the cycle.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, if you're an employee, like, yes, you may be stuck in your job for this exact point in time, but come 3 months from now, there might be plenty of options, and you'll remember what your employee, I guess, did during this time. So that's the question, Joydeep, because a lot of companies also have been given pay cuts. I know some of the accounting firms have, announced that they've been giving 20% pay cuts to their staff. Some of that's been wound back since revenues have been coming in. They've, been trickling it back to staff. What sort of strategy, or how does this strategy sit in the market, do you think?
Well, ultimately, as we were discussing before, any employee in an organisation at the moment is going to be looking around them in terms of what are my alternatives. Yes, my employer has said that you're going to have to take a haircut in terms of your pay. How long is that going to last for? Is there going to be some kind of uplift for me down the track if things improve? All of these things will be very relevant for an employee. Employers need to be careful that when they are making those kinds of changes to people's terms and conditions, don't assume that everyone will just be okay with it, and don't assume, and probably this is the even more fatal mistake, or the fatal mistake, I should say, thinking that just because you put it in, that there's no scope or need for ongoing discussion on a regular basis in relation to it. See a lot of employers around March or April this year having made some decisions, and they're not even talking to their people a couple of months down the track around when are they going to be unwinding things, what are the metrics that they as a business or an employer are going to be looking at and assessing in determining whether there's going to be any unwinding. And that causes a lot of consternation and anxiety for employees, because they might have been thinking, well, this is just short term, it's from April to June. But all of a sudden, if it's July to September, that's a very different proposition. So again, the key message here is don't make assumptions, fall back to regular and clear communication with your employees about these matters, and try to explain to them precisely what are the circumstances and metrics that you as a business are going to be looking towards that inform your decision making.
Do you think we're maybe moving from an era of bonus payments to non-cash bonus payments once the COVID restrictions are eased? Some people want to split their time between working in the office and working at home. That would have been a difficult conversation to maybe have 3 months ago, but maybe now that's the bargaining chip they can use if they're not getting the same amount of cash they were getting before.
It's a great comment, because I think one of the things that the good employers are doing at the moment is that they are not adopting a woe is us mentality to everything when it comes to managing their people. They are trying to be innovative. Even if their cash position might be tight, even if their profitability position might not be what it was a few months ago or in the past, they are looking at what can they do to be providing benefits, to be looking after their people in an innovative way, whether it's things like working from home or other things. And there's been some amazing innovation across a number of employers in the last few months. That's the key. It's not just, as you say, purely about cash anymore. It might become that one at some stage in the future, but now is the time for innovation. Talk to your people. What is it that's important to them? And that will differ across your workforce as well. Comes back to that need for regular communication.
So would it be somewhat tone deaf for employees to go in and ask for pay rises at this time? I mean, if they were expecting pay rises anyway, how do you navigate that as an employee?
Well, look, as glib as it might sound to say this, if you don't ask, you don't get. So long as people go in with the mindset of the answer could not just be a no, but you could also be seen as someone who is insensitive to your employer's circumstances, and that's the downside. It's not so much about whether you get it or not, it's how you're perceived. If you're going to be asking for it, make sure that you've got a legitimate case that's backed up by data, and that you can present it as something that the employer should be doing, not because they feel sorry for you or because you're making them feel guilty about not doing it, but because it's in their interest to do it. And that's where good employee-employer negotiations take place and result in good outcomes.
Yeah, good advice there, Joydeep. We always enjoy talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us on the Ausbiz today.
Thanks for having me.